So in mail, what happened was our opponents would send us make had a little bit of echo there. Um, Send her his instructions. You got the rotation, all the different situations. What to do, when the bunt, when the hit and run, when to pull a pitcher. When to substitute guys. So it's kind of the precursor to the computer manager that we're used to now, except they mail the instructions, and then you'll play the games. Report the results on a score sheet and then send it back to them to the commissioner. And the commissioner would roll it all up and send out a newsletter, and all this stuff was being typed and that kind of stuff and emailed back. I mean, not emailed, but through the postal service. Where I wound up going to Germany, and that became a little more difficult for me. I kind of slowed things down because it took 7 days to get a letter from Wiesbaden, Germany, where I was stationed at, back to the States to get that information to the commissioner in time. I stuck to the league probably till about 85 or 86. I came back home. I actually did a couple face-to-face drafts with them back down in Tampa or Kissimmee, Florida. one of our managers had a condo down there, and he would offer it up to do the draft once a year. Uh, Went back to got reassigned back to Europe, stayed in Holland, and by that time it was just too hard to keep up with the mail responsibilities. But then I had two kids, married, all the other things that happen when you have a young family. So I wound up dropping out. Regretted it. I think my team was the Berlin Bullets, or I think I even called it the Wiesbaden Vikings back then. I think that was one of the one teams that really stuck, the Vikes. But the computer age started happening for me. My job required me to be familiar with computers, and I wanted to buy an Apple II computer. I mean, when I saw the trash '80s, the Radio Shack computers in the late '70s, they were a gaming machine, and that's basically all they did. But Apple II, the Apples actually had spreadsheets like VisiCalc and keeping stats and running, be able to manage your teams or keep track of your teams electronically. Stratomatic followed suit, and they came out with their computer version games on 5.25 disc. I don't know, many of you still remember them. They were a floppy disk and had a whole 16K of memory, I think, back then. But they came out with versions for the Atari and the Commodore and IBM and the Macintosh. And Macintosh is pretty popular for gaming. They had uh, different systems that were still doing gaming, but eventually they dropped the Atari versions and the Commodore, and there was another brand out there too that I forget. But the Mac and the IBM was still chugging along. Um, so I started keeping my baseball leagues electronically and keep data. And I found out that I can do leagues on my own by myself. And I started doing that with, I think, 1984 seasons were the first ones that came out electronically from Stratomatic. And I did that. I actually used my computers for work, my Mac computer for work as well. So during lunchtime or downtime, I would do some Stratomatic gaming uh, on the government's time. But even then, there was a lag where it just wasn't fun just playing against a stupid computer. The computer wasn't as smart as the human players were back then, but they were okay, for the basic game. Eventually, I left Europe, went to Fort Dix, and I stayed there for a number of years during Desert Storm 1. And I started the Hall of Fame League, the USA Hall of Fame League. And it was a current league. And I think in the next one of the videos I'm going to talk about some of the GMs that have been with the league since the beginning, and those who have left that I've lost touch with, that I hopefully can reconnect with them someday. And talk about electronic versions now. America Online, AOL, used to have chat rooms back then, and that's how I would advertise on the Stratomatic bulletin boards. I think Strat BB was one of them, but there was a couple of news groups out there, that Stratomatic fans, once they got the computer bug, would advertise their need to do a league, and or want to do a league, be part of a league, and even Strat ran classified ads on their website, and they would advertise people who wanted to get in leagues. And so I started at the USA League. It was a current league. It was fun. We started the redrafts from scratch. There was no keepers or anything like that. And that went on from about 1995 to about 1999. Um, Again, family interferes with some things, and I shouldn't say interfere, but takes time away from you from your hobbies that you started and you don't want to stop. And it was very difficult keeping people together. There was a lot of turnover in that current league. We were relatively new to tournament leagues like that, but it it was fun. Then I got a brainstorm. I said, "Wow, about the year 2000, maybe it was 2000, 2001, not quite sure. The years, no, it had to be sooner than that. I'm sorry, it had to be about 1998." I said, "Wouldn't it be neat if we started with the old time players?" I don't think it was my idea, but someone just mentioned it, and I kind of took it and I ran. And back then, they didn't have computer teams for all the teams yet. All the seasons. So I looked at what Strat had, and I was still getting their games every year. From the 5 1/4 disc to the 3.5 inch discs, the CDs, and all the iterations they had over the years. But when that idea came up in about 1998, um, there were gaps in the seasons. So what I did was go back and see, okay, where does the gap start? So in 1998, I just went back, and what happened from 1959 to that time in 98, Stratomatic had a seasons disc for every season. It was when you get past or older seasons past the 59, um, they started having gaps. So I said, okay, let's start with 1959 and we'll do continuous. And then we decided the group of guys that in the current league, and I had to advertise for a couple others to get in the retro league. And I got a pretty big turnout, actually, first waiting list for a league to get started. And we set up a draft day. We drafted in one day back then. People just, it was a 24-hour marathon. We didn't drag the draft out. It was in a chat room. Generally everybody was there. Sometimes they will send me a list if they can't make it, but that was normally just 1 or 2 people. I started off with 14 players, 14 or 12. It could have been 12 GMs. 12 GMs. There were 25-man teams. There were no limits then, very little bit. The first player drafted in 1959, it's got a little bit of a history, was Luis Aparicio, of all players. And what happened, a week before the draft, I start coordinating. I said, okay, we're going to do it on Saturday, we're going to do it Sunday, 9 a.m., all that coordination. Everybody was in the chat room, except for one person. And we're waiting and waiting. And so what we did, we made a decision, says, okay, let's have Hal draft that person. Now, there was the Hank Aarons out there, and there was the McCoveys, and there was a lot of other historical players out there, Hall of Famers. But Hal, the computer programmer, just said, well, Luis Aparicio is probably the best player on the board right now, so we'll draft him. And I forget the name of the team, and I'll go back to it in another video because I'm going to talk more about the teams and the GMs and another. Excuse me, I'm fighting allergies again this season. Time for a sip of coffee. I don't know where I found this. I think my wife got this for me from one of my. I don't know if you guys can make it out. There you go. So that's how Luis Aparicio got drafted, and our 1959 season started. And it hadn't stopped since. Now, my original intent was I was not going to be a GM. I was not going to run a team. I was just going to be the commissioner. So in 1959 all the way up to maybe 1961 or 62, I didn't have a team. I was just managing the league. But as we all know, people drop out. They don't like the format, or they can't afford the game at the time. All different reasons. But they have to drop out, and I wound up picking up a team. And the team was the Russell Rowdies. So I didn't originally draft the Russell Rowdies back in '59. Somebody else did. And I don't recall his name. I probably have it written down somewhere. But he drafted a good team. Okay, well, I'll take this team. Never did get another manager in to take over Russell, so I wound up keeping it. I had other team GMs that had to drop out, and I actually ran another team called the Wiesbaden Vikings after my after my I-75 league, and when I was in Iowa in the early 2000s, my wife actually took a team over at the American Eskies because I was still playing Army and couldn't find anybody online to do any of that. But look, I'm going to end. That's how the I-95 league started. Excuse me, the USA Hall of Fame league started in 1959 season till now. Appreciate you listening to this video. I hope you like it. I had to break it up into 2 parts. I think you'll realize that after I post it. But maybe I'd like to do this maybe once or twice a month. And if you have anything you want me to talk about or demonstrate in the game online on the YouTube channel, let me know. And I'm going to go start posting this and see if it works. All right. So thanks for your time. I wanted to keep it under 5 minutes, but I guess I like to hear myself talk. So this is almost 15 minutes of 2 videos. All right. So see you all next time.